Well, let's continue with that conversation with Dr. Terry Tselane. He's from the Institute of Election Management Services in Africa. Dr. Tselane, thank you very much for your time. I know you were privy to the conversation that I was having with Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi there. He says that the argument by civil society that this is a system that is not used anywhere around the world is not a good argument, because he says nowhere around the world do we all use a blanket system. What do you say to that?
Thank you very much, Mr. Perhaps let me just quickly clarify that I am not a doctor. I like the title.
Well, yes, I've given you the title. My pleasure.
Thank you very much. I agree, of course, with the Minister when he says that the South African context will always be different from other jurisdictions. And the reason why it would be like that is that the Constitution, the legal framework, and the specificities of South Africa are different from other jurisdictions. And therefore, it is not a debate really in relation to this particular Electoral Amendment Bill. The debate is really around issues that have been identified as defective within the current Electoral Amendment Bill. And I think the Minister also accepts the fact that there could be those shortcomings. And that's why he said that perhaps if they were given sufficient time, they would have been able to deal with all the issues that have been dealt with. But the defects that are there are glaring, and everybody can actually be able to see them.
Well, a lot of people obviously are not happy with the fact that the bill was passed yesterday. And if there's pushback, right, and the Constitutional Court is approached again, and, civil society wins the case of public participation being flawed, etc., do you think that that would give us enough time to 2024? Are we looking at the delay of elections once again?
Of course, I mean, if the bill is challenged in courts, there is absolutely no way that we can actually be able to have the elections within a constitutionally stipulated period. So already as it is, I mean, the IEC is going to be operating under tremendous pressure because it will be introducing a system that has not been introduced in South Africa before. It will be new, not only for the officials of the IEC and staff, but also for the electorate. So you need really a very thorough education program for the electoral staff of the IEC, but also for the electorate, so that they understand exactly what is actually going to be happening with their votes when they go to voting stations.
He mentioned a second question, the Minister, that is, which is very important to answer. Only thing is that he said that they didn't have time to get that question answered, and it's about the constituencies. So are you in agreement at all about the bill that was passed in Parliament yesterday?
No, I'm not. I've raised my discomfort about the current bill, but also from the beginning, immediately after the bill, rather the Constitutional Court issued its judgment, I kept on trying to urge Parliament to consider changing the legislation in order to empower the Municipal Electoral Board to be able to do the constituencies for the country. And then I said this, that it would be much more easier for them because they already have got the data sets, they already have got the information, and they were going to be able to use the information that they've been using for demarcation of the municipalities to divide the country into constituencies. But also, it is not as though they were going to start from Norway, because as you will recall, Dr. Tselane already issued a report in 2003 with the recommendations. Absolutely. So those could have been used as a basis for the country to be cut into constituencies. The difficulty is that this thing is not really about the independence. As the court indicated, it is about the rights of adult citizens. So the rights of adult citizens are contained in Section 18 and 19 of the Constitution. And that is for them to be able to stand for office and then to be elected into office. Now, obviously, what it means is that ultimately, because they are going into Parliament or legislature without having to have a membership of a political party, it means they would be regarded as independents. But when the issue was raised, it's about the rights of adult citizens, whether those rights have been encroached upon or whether the bill now protects those rights. And then, in my opinion, one of the issues that we have already indicated is the fact that, the number of votes required or signatures required for an independent to stand for office is far more than what is actually allocated for a political party. A political party, for instance, would need only 1,000 in terms of the current legislation, and an independent candidate would require almost 9,000 if you take into consideration the 20% of 45,000, which is a requirement for a party to get a seat in parliament. So this is one of the glaring issues that there is no equality in terms of how those adult citizens are treated when they want to do it on their own compared to the political parties. That's the first difficulty. The second difficulty is what I've been referring to as a withering away of a seat of an independent. In other words, if an independent vacates office or dies, there is no possibility of having a by-election in order to allow people who have elected that particular individual to again choose another person who's going to represent them. Instead, the votes of those who were given to the independent then go to the political parties. And in that position, that seat or that region will then lose its representation. Now, that's a difficulty because why would you introduce a system where you don't basically want a sustainable arrangement for independents or for people who are coming in other than through membership of a political party?
Exactly. And also the argument, Mr. Tselane, was that it also raises the concern about accountability because political party members who end up in parliament occupying those seats hide behind the fact that they belong to a party. So you can't hold them individually accountable. And also it raises the concern about whether or not my vote actually counts. Does it actually count if this bill is what is passed really by 2024?
Absolutely. I think, also the fact that now, instead of actually cutting the country into proper constituencies, you just turning provinces into regions and saying, now you can stand as a candidate in your region. That does not really deal with issues properly because you don't actually even take in consideration the number of the population in that particular area. So there is no scientific information that has actually been used to make a determination about the so-called constituencies or regions that are supposed to be where a candidate is supposed to be contested.
Mr. Tselane, I just want to ask you one more question that has nothing to do with what was discussed in Parliament yesterday. It has to do with the coalition in Johannesburg and coalitions in the province of Gauteng and how they look to be disappearing or disseminating, right? Because the politicians obviously are meeting in council and changing what the electorate said. It's quite interesting to see because the electorate didn't want the ANC in power, at least in Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni. They either stayed away from the polls or they voted for somebody else. But today we have another political party, which is the ANC ruling Johannesburg. I just wonder, it's not an attack on the ANC. It's just one of those situations where you wonder if South Africa is actually ready for a coalition, if it can just collapse the way that it has.
I think all of us in the country really need to understand processes that we are now under, particularly under this coalitions where now no single party has got sufficient majority to be able to form a government. Now, of course, it's erroneous to say that the ANC did not actually get voted. It was voted in, but it was not voted in to be able to form a government.
Yes.
Yes. Just like all other political parties, there was no single political party where the majority of the South Africans, or rather the residents in those respective municipalities have said, you are going to be governing. So what it means is that the political parties themselves, it could be the ANC, it could be any other political party, they've got to negotiate amongst themselves in order to be able to form a government. So there is no party that is going to be excluded from the negotiation, but the fact that there is no party that has got absolute majority requires political parties to get together to be able to govern the municipalities. My issue, and then I've raised this on numerous occasions, to say the difficulty is that because there is no regulation of the of coalitions, you have now almost what I refer to as fat and sit arrangement, where a person who is unhappy about a particular arrangement just leaves an offer, rather a coalition, without really dealing with all the issues that they're supposed to be dealing with. But if it was regulated, then it was going to be much more difficult for political parties to come in and out of a relationship of a coalition.
It's like a relationship. You divorce, you come back together, you marry someone else. And what it looks like to the electorate, at least, because of the fact that we, the residents of Johannesburg, are the ones who voted for a coalition, and it was up to the political parties themselves to find themselves and tell us who exactly would rule, right? And what it looks like to us is that it's a bartering of positions, and it's no longer about us. That's how